Welcome to the Blue Duck Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Blue Duck Fantasy Football Podcast. Matt, have you grown since the last episode, or are you sitting on a booster seat? By the way, I fixed the shelf. It's straight now, and I got another one. So, definitely not a camera issue where it was slanted. Definitely not. Anyways, Matt, why don't you tell the people what we're going to be doing today on episode 2?
Today we are going to be previewing the AFC and the NFC North divisions.
All right, I'm going to start off with Baltimore Ravens. And at quarterback, sophomore quarterback, Lamar Jackson, who we both like this year. Definitely a guy who has a high floor, but also a high ceiling.
Yep, definitely has a high ceiling and a high floor there. The high floor is pretty self-explanatory. He's going to get you 70 to 80 yards rushing probably a game. It's going to give you 7 or 8 points right there. The rushing touchdowns, obviously, most leagues you're going to get the 6 points versus the 4 for a throwing touchdown. And the ceiling, again, he could run up to 150 yards with 2 rushing touchdowns, which starts you at a minimum of, 27 points right there.
And you have to think he's improved on his passing since last season. He's going to be more of a dual threat than just a runner who can sometimes throw. And as you mentioned, the in the league where it's 4-point passing touchdowns, he has even more value because he's going to be he'll run in a dozen at least. So moving on to running back, we have new Raven Mark Ingram coming over from the Saints. And he'll be the lead back, followed by Gus Edwards, who seems to just be losing value by the day. And followed by rookie Justice Hill, who was possible third down back and definitely a great dynasty pick.
Yeah, Ingram coming over from New Orleans, obviously a big boost to the running game. Currently being drafted running back 23 in standard and 44th overall. What I've done here is I've listed the running backs around him as well. Chris Carson, David Montgomery, Sony Michel, and Philip Lindsay. I'm taking him above Michelle and Lindsay, and below Carson and Montgomery. So this actually falls right in my rankings. Now that I say that, I actually think I have Sony Michel higher. So scratch that. Sony Michel, then Mark Ingram. So I would actually take Michel over Mark Ingram for that.
I'm going to agree with you there. I would take him over Philip Lindsay, but I would take the rest of the names that you mentioned there above Mark Ingram. What about Gus Edwards? I know we have him on one team on a contract that we're going to be cutting tomorrow. He seems to have just lost all value with Ingram and Justice Hill really playing well. His role is probably going to be limited to less than 10 touches per game. This team is going to run, but I just don't see him being able to do anything. He's not a pass catcher. That'll be Justice Hill's role, and they'll probably try to get Justice Hill involved as much as possible as the season goes on, so his value will just keep dropping. Is Gus Edwards someone you're thinking about drafting in this league, in any league?
Not at the moment, mostly because the reasons you just mentioned. He does seem to be falling off a little bit. But people do forget he was very successful in the limited amount of starts he did get last year. Kind of a little surprised they went out and spent the money to bring in Mark Ingram to essentially do the same thing, maybe a little bit of an uptick there. But Gus, unfortunately, right now is just not someone I'm looking at. He is someone that a lot of people are not looking at, just looking at his ADP right now. He is being drafted as running back 69 in standard, running back 70 in PPR, amongst the likes of Deonta Foreman, who obviously will change now that he's on IR, TJ Yeldon, Jalen Richard, Mike Davis, guys that you're just not looking to draft at this point.
Yeah, Justice Hill, a sleeper for me, especially in a PPR league. This team is going to run a lot. And passes that they do throw are probably going to be short screens to the running back, short screens to Hollywood Brown as we transition over to the wide receivers for this team. We got the rookie Hollywood Brown, the veteran Willie Snead, and I have another rookie here, Miles Boykin. Any of these guys that you like or you'll be drafting?
This isn't a team I'm going to be looking for wide receivers from, but if I'm going to pick one of these guys, it's going to be Hollywood Brown, who also goes by Marquise Brown. You'll see that name in your drafts, not Hollywood, so don't be looking for Hollywood Brown. Currently going wide receiver 61 and 63 in standard and PPR respectively. Being drafted around Michael Gallup, Curtis Samuel, which seems way too low for Curtis Samuel. Mohamed Sanu and Jamison Crowder, I would take him above Sanu and Crowder, but I would take the other two first there.
Yeah, news out of camp is that he's not where they need him to be. He's still progressing and not ready. And my biggest fear with any of the pass catchers on this team is quarterback didn't complete 15 passes last year. Sure, that number might go up, but a lot of those are going to go to the running backs, some to the tight ends. I just don't see anybody getting enough volume to be a factor. If I am going to gamble on someone, it is going to be Marquise Hollywood Brown. Moving on to tight ends, I got Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst. Mark Andrews would be the one to look at, but I don't see him as being a starting running back in fantasy this year. I have him at best as a bye week fill-in, and Hayden Hurst is not someone I'm drafting in any league, even a 16-team league. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, same for me with the tight ends here. Mark Andrews would be, again, the one I would be looking at, though. But, yeah, he's being drafted outside of the top 14. If you have a 16-team league, sure, he's an okay position there to take him. Personally, I would probably go with a little bit more of a safer bet than like Jordan Reed. But if you are going to go for a tight end from the Ravens, Andrews is the one, not Hayden Hurst for me there.
All right, that's the Ravens. Let's move on to the Bengals. And good old Andy Dalton. Thoughts on Andy Dalton in 2019?
Andy Dalton is someone I will not be owning this year, with the lone exception if I'm in a super flex or 2-quarterback league. I will take him as a third quarterback, as a bye week replacement / injury replacement. He's going to be Andy Dalton. He's going to probably get you your 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns maybe. Nothing spectacular.
My prediction for this year is this is Andy Dalton's last season, and I don't know if he plays out the full season, because Ryan Finley's knocking on the door. He's been playing well in the preseason. He was my number 3 quarterback of the rookies coming into this season, and I don't think Ryan Finley is miles better than Dalton, but the Dalton experiment has run its course. It's time to give somebody another shot, and Finley is an NFL-ready quarterback. I see him taking over maybe week 10 or so. But either way, neither guy is someone that you like to own. Running back's a different story, though. Joe Mixon, complete 3-down back. Somebody who's being drafted where? Top 10 running back?
He is being drafted as running back number 10 in standard, running back 9 in PPR. In standard, he is going behind James Conner, Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, and being drafted just in front of Dalvin Cook and Leonard Fournette. For me personally, I actually have him ahead of all of those players.
I will double down on that, as I have him ahead of all those players as well. I think the closest one would probably be Cook, then Connor. But I have him ahead of both those guys and the rest of them as well. We got Gio Bernard still there. He is the handcuff, but will likely lose third down work to the rookie Travion Williams, who is basically a prototypical third down back. And wrapping up the running back core, Rodney Anderson, who's basically going to be taking over the Gio role next year. Gio's last year under contract. Not much to say about these guys in a redraft league. Travion Williams, interesting in Dynasty. Maybe even Rodney Anderson in a deep Dynasty league.
Would you be more interested in someone like Ryan Finley jumping backwards a little bit in more of a Dynasty type format, though?
Ryan Finley,
Yeah.
the quarterback?
Yes.
I have him in two quarterback leagues. In a 2-quarterback league, he has value similar to Dalton. In a single quarterback league, not like, I'm sure you got to draft a quarterback at some point in a Dynasty league, but he's not someone I'm overly excited about. I think he's going to be a slightly better or equal Andy Dalton for his career, and that's not overly exciting.
It is definitely not very exciting.
The wide receivers are pretty interesting. We got off-injured A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, who had the breakout last year, and always injured John Ross, the first-round pick from, it's his 3rd year, right?
This is his 3rd season, yep.
So A.J. Green is one of the guys that we have as an avoid because of the injury history and because he's currently injured. Tyler Boyd is definitely a guy that I like, definitely a top 20 wide receiver this year. And John Ross, believe it or not, I like as a sleeper. I think A.J. Green is going to be on the way out, and I think John Ross, 3rd-year wide receivers, have a good chance to break out. He had first-round pedigree, so I like him. You have the ADP on John Ross?
I do have the ADP on all 3 gentlemen, but we'll start with John Ross since you just asked. Wide receiver 94 in standard.
So
And
he's free.
he is free at the end of your draft. And wide receiver 102 in PPR. What I was going to chime in on here is Tyler Boyd. You had mentioned easily top 20 wide receiver. Going higher than that in both formats here. He's 24 in standard and 23 in PPR. Being drafted behind the likes of Tyler Lockett in both leagues, Calvin Ridley, AJ Green in PPR. Being drafted just above Mike Williams from LA Chargers there and DJ Moore. And he's being drafted ahead of Calvin Ridley in PPR. But that's where he's sitting. I'm going to agree with you on, for the most part, I'm definitely taking him ahead of Lockett, AJ. In standard, I actually have Mike Williams ahead of him. But
In standard, for sure, Mike Williams ahead of him. But in PPR, Tyler Boyd is going to be miles ahead of him. But yeah, I agree with you there. I'm taking Tyler Boyd over all those names. As much as I like AJ Green, it's Tyler Boyd time in Cincinnati. And just to finish off on the John Ross thing, he's the type of player that you draft in one of your last picks. You give him 2 weeks. If he doesn't do anything, you cut bait and you get somebody else. Those are great players to grab at the end of your draft. You're not grabbing a rookie like an A.J. Brown and waiting 6 to 8 weeks to see if he's going to finally become something. You're giving the guy 2 weeks. He doesn't do it. Cut. On to the next one. Somebody's producing. Why don't we move on to the tight ends, Matt?
okay, well, the lone tight end of note here is Tyler Eifert. Unfortunately, there is not a lot to say about him. Had a big potential to be a big fantasy player. About 2-3 seasons ago, he was being drafted fairly high. Did have his little breakout there. Unfortunately, injuries just keep him off of the field. He's never recovered from that. Being drafted on par here, tight end 30 in standard, tight end 25 in PPR. It's not someone that's going to be owned in majority of leagues. Being drafted behind guys like Cameron Brate, Mike Gesicki in standard, Dallas Goedert, and Jason Witten in PPR. Being drafted behind
Definitely
those
not an
guys.
exciting situation there. I had CJ Uzoma there as well. Neither guy is somebody that I'm interested in. I assume Eifert will get hurt, and then Uzoma will become the full-time tight end, and even still, he's at best a bye-week fill-in.
That is a good assumption with Tyler Eifert.
On to the most hyped team of 2019, the Cleveland Browns.
Dare we see the offseason Super Bowl champions?
Is that what they're calling them?
That's what I'm calling them right now.
Led by Baker Mayfield, who seems to be criticizing Daniel Jones today.
Correct. He did go back on that a little bit, though.
Yeah, a little bit, but not much. Anyways, thoughts on Baker for 2019?
Baker is, for me, he is my quarterback number 3 in QB 4 points and 6 points, actually. I'm sorry, actually, I lied. He's in my number 4 and 4 point. Anyhow, obviously, tremendous upside. He's got so many weapons. They've got going to have a great round game with Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt coming in later on. Regardless of that, whoever is carrying the ball there, they're going to have a great balance. Odell Beckham Jr. coming in. Big weapons with Landry and Njoku anyway. I expect big things from Baker. QB4, QB3, QB4. You know, that's almost a floor for Baker this year.
That is quite high, and yeah, Baker is getting a lot of hype. I have him at 5 here in 4 point, and I recently moved him ahead of Deshaun Watson, who was one of the guys I'm looking to avoid this year. I do have him behind Drew Brees. I am really high on Drew Brees, but he has so many weapons that you just don't see how he can't be successful. Barring some type of injury, he was good last year without Odell Beckham. Now he has Odell Beckham. He's going to be great.
He really is. He's being drafted as quarterback 4, pretty much appropriate what we're talking about. Behind Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers, right behind him is Andrew Luck and Matt Ryan, are the guys right behind him.
Do you have the round that he's going in?
He
Or
is
the
pick
pick?
58, so depending on how many teams are in your league, what round that is. But, I mean, that's going to be round 5-ish.
And as much as we're banging the drum hard for weight on QB, you will get opportunities where somebody could fall to maybe a 6th round. Because I was looking at Aaron Rodgers today. He fell to the 6th round. I have 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and my flex. There's nothing wrong with taking a quarterback there. But before that, you're going to be reaching a bit. Anyways.
Yeah, no, you just definitely, I was just going to echo what you're saying, just definitely wait on the quarterback if you can. But again, if you're set up for your starting roster is filled except for your quarterback and Baker is sitting there, go for it.
Right, and you can also wait on tight end. It's another position that if you don't hit and the guys go ahead of you and you can't take them, then you're just waiting to the back. It's going to line up or it's not going to line up for tight end. So, as I mentioned, if you got 5 picks and you got a quarterback like Baker sitting there or Aaron Rodgers, nothing wrong with pulling the trigger on that. Next up, Nick Chubb. Now, my note on Nick Chubb is he's going to get you to the playoffs, but what's he going to do once you get to the playoffs? Hunt coming back. They're going to be splitting. This is a playoff team. They're going to be looking to keep their backs healthy. They're not going to care about fantasy points. They're going to be splitting carries. The best case scenario for these two backs is one of them getting traded or one of them getting injured would be good for the other back as well.
Yeah, like you said, they're towards the end they're going to want to keep them fresh. Like you said, Cleveland, as long as they are looking like a playoff team, which I imagine they will be in this division, probably winning it. Chubb is going to go from the bell cow back to splitting with Kareem when he gets back. Kareem will probably take 2, maybe 3 weeks to get going. Unfortunately, that lines up right with fantasy playoffs, and when you start, Nick Chubb is likely going to fade a little bit, unfortunately, there. Just going to mention his ADP then. Running back 40 in standard, running back 39 in PPR, 102, 103 where he's being drafted. He's being drafted around the likes of Shady McCoy, Royce Freeman, Latavius Murray, Ronald Jones, Peyton Barber. Where would you put him with those guys?
Well, I'm not excited about any of those guys. I have come around a little bit on Royce Freeman and do think that he has a decent opportunity there. To kind of be in the same situation as Hunt will be in, except for the whole season, as he and Lindsey will be in some type of a split, depending on the week, depending on the game plan. I'd probably take Freeman above Hunt, but with the rest of those names there, none of them excite me. I don't see any of them having any week-to-week value, so I'll pick the higher-end guy who might have value, even though that means I'm taking up a roster spot for 8 weeks or so. And now we'll move on to the wide receivers. OBJ coming in, top 5?
Top 5 definitely for me.
Other than some little bit of injury history, he should be a top 5 wide receiver this season. There's really not much to say about him. This is going to be a great offense. We're going to keep saying that. Jarvis Landry, I have him 15th to 20th depending on scoring, and I do have that OBJ actually helps him.
That's exactly my note there as well. A lot of people are down on Jarvis Landry because they think Beckham's going to steal all the targets. They're not seeing the perspective that Odell Beckham's going to draw all the coverage away from Jarvis Landry. Landry's going to have tons of room to work underneath. Njoku's going to be in that area as well, but I really like Jarvis Landry this year. Even in standard, I've got him top 20. He is going well below that. He is more of a PPR guy for sure, but ADP-wise, you would not really think that. He's being drafted wide receiver 27 in standard and 26 in PPR. PPR, that's definitely a steal. Standard, I think that's a steal, but PPR for sure.
Absolutely, and he is one of our wide receivers to target this year. Don't let OBJ scare you. This is Baker's team, and they are going to throw. And the run game will benefit from it, and the run game will help set up the throwing, but they are going to throw.
Just think about it this way with Landry. In PPR, he's being drafted later than Calvin Ridley, later than DJ Moore. Sure, DJ Moore, there isn't a lot more in Carolina, but Calvin Ridley is not a high target guy or a high reception guy. I just don't see why that's happening. He's being drafted below DJ Moore in standard as well, and actually Calvin Ridley too.
Well, yeah, I'd assume if he's being drafted behind them in PPR, he's going to be definitely behind them in standard. 2 other wide receivers here for the Browns. We got Higgins and Callaway. Callaway suspended for 4 games to start the season, so Higgins will be sliding in opposite Odell Beckham and with Landry in the slot, or however they decide to set it up. My take on this is Higgins will be the number 3 to start, but Callaway's kind of the handcuff. If one of these big 2 wide receivers get hurt, they'll probably lean more on Callaway as the season goes on. Callaway's got the higher ceiling. Higgins has been there for going on got to be 4 years now and really hasn't shown it, whereas Callaway was a highly sought-out player who had character issues in college coming out.
Here's something that's interesting with these two players, just for draft position-wise. Antonio Callaway in standard is going as wide receiver 73. Rashard Higgins is going as wide receiver 111. But when you bring it to PPR, the gap is narrowed quite a bit. It goes from wide receiver 90 with Callaway to wide receiver 80 with Higgins. Higgins is a guy might be productive for you for the first 4 weeks. After that, you're probably cutting bait with him as Callaway comes back into the offense, realistically.
Yeah, I agree with that. And even with him being in the offense, he's going to be the 4th or 5th target after the tight end and the running back. So his value is more of a bye week fill-in. And with there being, is there buys in week 4 maybe?
There is buys in week 4.
Okay, so for 3 weeks, he's not going to have any value barring some fluke game. You're not going to be starting him. You're going to have your starting lineup set. It's going to be better than Higgins. So Higgins is a guy that I wouldn't draft. I wouldn't draft Callaway either. But I'd maybe look into grabbing Callaway in a deeper league where I had either OBJ or Landry.
And especially as he comes off of the wire, because he will go undrafted in a lot of leagues like this. Week 5 rolls around. Why not take a flyer on him if you're cutting someone like Rashard Higgins even, or somebody that we'll mention in future that we can just cut bait.
Yeah, or John Ross.
John Ross. Someone like John Ross. Last thing we talked about. Yes, that's a perfect example, actually.
And
if
since
he's
we
not
talked
producing.
enough about Njoku, let's get to him now. Where's he being drafted?
He is the same tight end in both standard and PPR, number 10, 101 and 90. Being drafted just behind Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald, ahead of Austin Hooper and Delaney Walker. And stop me if you've heard this before, but in PPR he is being drafted behind Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald, and in front of Austin Hooper and Delaney Walker.
So not much change in the PPR standard from tight ends, and that's the way it is. Njoku is a steal as tight end 10, as he's going to be a borderline top 5 player. He's almost in that second tier of guys with the Ingrams and the Howard and the Hunter Henrys. He's 7th, but he could outfinish any of those guys. I wouldn't bet he'd outfinish all of them, but he definitely could creep into the top 5 conversation.
I agree, and this is someone that you're going to want to target just because he is going below tight ends that we feel that he's stronger than, and that's why he's a good target for you later on in your draft. 10-team leagues, he's the last tight end going off the board, unless you draft backup tight ends, which you really shouldn't.
Yeah, Njoku, can't say enough good things about him. He was one of our targets today on tight ends to target.
There you go.
So we're in agreement there. Let's move it on to the Steelers. And Big Ben. How old is he now? 38?
I think he's 37, but I'm not 100% sure. But I believe they lost a couple of key pieces this offseason.
Who? They still got Juju, right?
They do still have Juju.
Is Vance McDonald still there?
Yes, he is.
What about James Conner?
He is also still there.
Sounds like a Super Bowl team to me, unless I'm missing something.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell. Oh, right, Le'Veon Bell. But he didn't play last year, and they were still decent.
This is true.
But they did lose Antonio Brown. You can't replace Antonio Brown. Probably still the best wide receiver in the league, skill-wise. Hopkins?
That's
Hopkins?
That's debatable.
He did finish fantasy wide receiver 1 for, 5 years in a row? And last year I think he was 2 or 3.
He hasn't finished outside the top 5 since 2012. That's I can tell you for sure.
Well, that's a good stat. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So Big Ben, losing a weapon like that, he's going to fall off. He was, top 5 last year? 2 or 3 even, I think?
Yeah, I believe he was number 3.
I know he had a lot of passing attempts, but this year you're not going to have Juju and Antonio Brown there. You're going to have Juju and a group of guys trying to fill that role. And I don't think Big Ben's going to be bad per se, but he's not anywhere near what he was last year.
No, you're right. But Ben is someone I am also comfortable running in with the league because I think quarterbacks is so deep this year is part of the reason we're telling everyone to wait on them. He's going to be somebody that's going to be consistent for you. I know he's had his issues of being a road quarterback before, but he seemed to get over that pretty well last year as well. He's being drafted as the 14th quarterback off the board. So being taken right behind Brady, I would take Ben first. Kyler Murray, I would probably take Ben. I think he's safer there. Being drafted in front of Jameis Winston and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and at that spot, from quarterback, once you get past Matt Ryan, the quarterbacks after that, it's who do you want? Do you want Lamar Jackson? Do you want Kyler Murray? Do you want Phillip Rivers? Do you want Ben Roethlisberger? Do you want Brady? They're all kind of bunched together, and it goes deep. So you get your pick, and don't go into any draft thinking, I have to get this one quarterback. You should have them grouped up. Like, I need this one of these three, and if they all go, then I'm going to get one of these three. Just understand it is so deep, and we're comfortable with almost, I'm not going to say 20, but it's getting pretty close to 20 quarterbacks. That would be good.
I definitely agree with that. It is 20 for me. I'm okay all the way down to quarterbacks like bad preseason, bad practices. Jimmy Garoppolo, I think he is going to be fine coming regular season. And if need be, I will run out Tom Brady, who is my 20th ranked quarterback. He's clearly going higher, so he's not going to be sitting there. But that means you're going to get Kyler, Lamar Jackson, Rivers, Cousins, somebody like that. That's all fine.
Yeah, and Brady getting a bit of a boost with the Gordon news. Gordon coming back should help him not fall off as much. Moving on to the running backs here, we got James Conner, who was a breakout star last year. Would have been a steal of most drafts, somebody who would have easily helped you win your league, getting him, what do you go, 8th round?
Later
than the 8th?
Yeah.
Most people believe that Le'Veon Bell was going to come back. This year, I think people are pretty open to these running backs that are holding out, not playing since Le'Veon did it last year. But until Le'Veon had done it, it was just unthinkable. Right,
and James Conner went to the point where he was undrafted in a lot of leagues. Most of the time, if you had Bell, you were going to take Conner. You weren't going to run that risk. But obviously, right this year, he is running back number 7 being drafted in both standard and PPR, behind the usual suspects of David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, being drafted ahead of Todd Gurley and Nick Chubb in standard and PPR. It's Gurley and Mixon are the running backs right after him. Personally, I'm actually going Joe Mixon ahead of Conner, and we did actually double down on that earlier. But there's nothing wrong with James Conner at the end of your round 1. That's where he's going here. I don't have a problem taking him there.
Yeah, and here's my take on Conner. The Steelers missed the playoffs by 1 game last year with Antonio Brown there. And sure, the defense has probably gotten better with some of the players that they picked up in the draft, but they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot. They're not going to be easily in. And in order to get wins, they're going to have to play their best player, and that's James Conner. So I'm not too worried about Jalen Samuels stealing that many carries as they try to keep him healthy. That's something that they'll be doing in LA with Gurley because they're easily a playoff team. Now, Benny Snell, the rookie, is a goal line back who's going to average a nice 2.6 yards per carry. He's going to be a little bit of a vulture, but I'm not too worried about that. So I'm confident with Conner, as you mentioned. You said at the end of the first round? Yeah, definitely a top 10 running back this year.
Yeah, just about Jalen Samuels. There's been a lot of buzz about him in camp, though. He's getting a lot of reps, and they are talking about possibly trying to rest Conner. Could be coach speak, could be GM speak, whatever you believe. Samuels is going RB 51, 42. If you feel the need to cuff, sure. Going that late isn't going to really, you're just going to take another bench guy anyway. How do you feel about Samuels as a cuff to Conner here?
One of the few cuffs that are probably considered getting in the draft, barring situations like the Saints where Latavius Murray's obviously going to have value, or the Rams where 2 or 3 guys could have value. And in a situation where one guy is the lead back, here's my take on what's going to happen, whether it's coach speak or not. If they start off 50-50 and they start losing, it's going to be let's give Conner the ball because Conner's the better running back. So go ahead and buy low on Conner if you miss him in your draft when somebody's trying to get rid of him after 3 weeks when they think they're splitting, because they're going to be going back to him. He's great out of the backfield. He can catch well, and he showed that last year. So it gives him another angle. Jalen Samuels is a fine player, and behind that line, he can do well. Anybody can do well, but James Conner is the guy they're going to need to get to the playoffs. On to the wide receivers, and the new number 1 in Pittsburgh, Juju Smith-Schuster.
Juju, definitely a top 10 receiver for almost anybody that I believe is ranking fantasy wide receivers this year. There's 200 targets roughly that's going to be accounted for with Antonio Brown being gone. They're going to be spread out. Obviously, Juju is not going to end up with like 400 to 500 targets. We're not saying that. Don't get carried away here. But there is going to be more targets thrown his way. So having said that, there's also going to be more coverage going his way because Juju is the man now, and AB's not there to steal the top cover guys anymore. It may be an adjustment for Juju. I feel like he's going to overcome it and be fine. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I was kind of wavering on him last year, thinking, maybe a sophomore slump after that great rookie season. Now defenses will pay attention to him. But he dominated last year and, beat all expectations. I'm not worried about him this year. I think he gets 200 targets. I don't even think that's like a debate. Like, I think Antonio Brown has done it. I know Julio Jones has done it. He's the number one. There's 3 guys that are the number 2. Big Ben trusts him. He's going to go to him. I wouldn't be surprised if he got close to 200 targets.
Yeah, and just to that point with Antonio Brown, Big Ben went to him regardless of coverage because he trusted him so much. So he could be triple covered. He went to him anyway. Same thing's going to happen with Juju this year. Unless he really falls in love with Dante Moncrief or James Washington. No reason Juju gets the top under 200 targets here. Just going to quickly mention here where he's being taken. Wide receiver 7 in standard, wide receiver 6 in PPR. Pretty reasonable spots there. Behind Odell Beckham, behind Tyreek Hill in standard, behind Michael Thomas and Odell Beckham in PPR. It seems like a fine choice there. Again, this is going to come down to who do you prefer out of that mix. They're all very good players, and everyone's going to have their personal preference there. Personally, I have OBJ ahead of him, Hill ahead of him, in standard, and in PPR, Michael Thomas and OBJ ahead of him as well. So I actually agree with where he's going here.
I have him ranked 3rd, but I think I'm moving down to 4th right behind Michael Thomas. I really like him this year. I might put him up to 3rd in PPR, and that's what I'm looking at actually. So let's see where I have him in standard. So I'm good with him at 3 in PPR. I know it's higher than most, but I am a believer, and I have him ranked 5th in standard just behind Mike Evans, who is going to explode in that offense. But I have him in both sides ahead of Odell Beckham. But like Matt said, it's entirely up to who you like. You're not going to win your league picking Juju or Odell. The difference at the end of the league, at the end of the year, is going to be, barring injury, not significant.
Very minimal, for sure. What about these other... Oh, go ahead.
Should we get into some of these? Where's Dante Moncrief going?
Dante Moncrief is currently being slotted as wide receiver 54 in standard, wide receiver 49 in PPR. I'm going to loop these guys together because James Washington is actually going ahead of him in both formats. Wide receiver 48 in standard and wide receiver 47 in PPR. Who are you taking between these two receivers?
Dante Moncrief.
Me
it's
too.
not close. James Washington is fast. James Washington, maybe in standard, I'd consider him over Moncrief. It would be close, but in PPR, there's no way. I know he's had 2 good preseason games, catching about 3 or 4 balls for about 80 yards. That's just not something that's going to be week-to-week viable, catching for 20-plus yard averages. I don't think he's going to be bad this year. I just think that he's not going to have that many catches. I would absolutely love James Washington. It would take him well ahead of Dante Moncrief in a best ball league. But outside of that, no, I'm taking Dante Moncrief. He's just going to be more consistent week to week. And he's not going to have the week where he puts up a 1 for 20, and then the next week a 3 for 80 and a score or something.
Yeah, you stole my best ball point away with James Washington. I was going to say that would be the one league I would consider him over. Interesting point with Moncrief. This is going to change because of the recent news, but as of right now in PPR, he's being taken ahead of someone like Josh Gordon. It's not going to stay.
Yeah, Gordon's going to be moving up. I actually watched a condensed version of the Steelers-Chiefs game, and Deontay Johnson looked not bad. He caught a touchdown that wasn't a touchdown that he gave to him, and then he was called on offensive pass interference on something I thought was not offensive pass interference that went for a touchdown. Does a good job of tracking the ball on a ball that's kind of thrown up and just making adjustments to get it. So he's an interesting deep sleeper. In most leagues, he's not going to get drafted. But if you're in a 16-team league, he's somebody interesting that might end up just taking over that number 2 role, similar to what Martavis Bryant did several years ago, where he wasn't supposed to be the number 2. I can't remember exactly who they had there. I think it might have been Marcus Wheaton.
Yeah,
and then he leapfrogged Marcus Wheaton pretty quickly.
Respectfully, Moncrief is probably a little bit more established than Marcus Wheaton was ever. I don't see Deontay Johnson being a redraft play this year. Maybe, but there's just 3 good young receivers in front of him. I just don't see it happening for him this year.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it would be in a 16-team league at the end of your draft to take a shot on somebody where you have a bench where you can kind of hold them and see what happens with a rookie like that. But moving on to Vance McDonald. What's his ADP?
Vance is being drafted as tight end number 9. We kind of touched on that.
Yeah, just ahead of Njoku,
right? Being taken slot 91 in standard, 82 in PPR. So that's going to put you in around 7-ish, depending on how many teams are in your league. Tight end 9 is a good spot for him, for me. I prefer Njoku. I think we both hammered that home. But I have him number 11 in standard, actually, behind. We're gonna talk about Trey Burton later, and I actually have Trey Burton higher, so I'm not gonna waste too much time on him right now. But Vance is gonna be consistent. That's the best way to put him, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're a big fan of just boring old vanilla ice cream, Vance McDonald is the guy for you, because he's gonna be consistent week to week. He's not going to win you any weeks, but you'll probably be a good 4 for 65 and the odd score every other game. A fine play. I'm happy with him at tight end in a 12-team league if I've drafted and waited on tight end. Let's move on to the NFC, and we're going to start with the Bears and Mitch Trubisky, a player that I will probably not draft in any league this year.
Mitch is somebody for me that is at the end of I'm okay having this quarterback. I don't really want him. 2 QB leagues, super flex, fine for a second quarterback, of course. But he's not a target for me at all. He's being drafted as quarterback 20 currently. He's being drafted just below Rivers and Cousins. I don't think either of those two are even close to him. Being ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo, I'd probably take Jimmy G. And then Sam Darnold. I'm going to take Mitch over Sam Darnold if I have that choice.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. But outside of a 2-quarterback league, it's not getting to that. People would have to be taking their second quarterbacks before I'm taking my first. And a lot of teams would have to be taking their second quarterback before I'd have taken my first in order for me to end up with Mitch Trubisky. And that's just unlikely to happen because I'm going to get a quarterback in around 10 or 11 with still 3 rounds of picks left. And usually the backups will go in the last couple rounds. So, like I said, I won't be targeting him, and I won't be getting him in any leagues.
Just a quick point on quarterbacks. We're going to hammer this to death. Wait on them, but don't wait that far. Also, don't draft a backup. You don't need one.
Yeah, double-digit rounds for quarterback. Like I said, unless it lines up perfectly with your team, where you can get one of the big guys like a Baker or an Aaron Rodgers or, a healthy Andrew Luck and not a current Andrew Luck in round 6, then that would be the earliest I would go. Running backs, David Montgomery getting a lot of love. I absolutely love the talent. Watching the tape coming out of college, he slips tackles so well. He's not going to be the guy who breaks off the 80-yard run, but he's going to just continuously get, 4+ yards every single carry, and coaches love that. So he's going to see the field a lot. But Tariq Cohen is there, and he'll probably see close to 200 touches. And they also brought in Mike Davis from Seattle, who should see some touches as well. I love the talent with David Montgomery, but I don't see him getting much over 250 touches.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Mike Davis stealing a lot from him at all. He might just be kind of a breather. Tariq is definitely still going to be a factor in this offense, which is scary for David Montgomery owners. But Montgomery is going to be the primary rusher. Tariq is more or less a receiver. He obviously does run the ball a little bit, but I think David Montgomery is going to be the lead rushing attempts guy here. He's being drafted as running back 22 and 23 standard PPR. That's going to lead you to your second running back. I'm okay with that. I've got him in running back 22 in both standard and PPR. So I'm basically right on line with what they've got here. Picks 42 and 46. So you're taking him in round 3 if you're getting him. Maybe early round 4 in PPR there.
Yeah, and the value just to me isn't there. Like, he's not overvalued, he's not undervalued, he's kind of just bang on. But like I said, with him not having that breakaway speed and him getting less touches than other running backs will get, you're going to get consistency for sure, but you're not going to get the big games on top of it.
Okay, the last point I'm going to make on Montgomery is the running backs taken right after him are in standard are Mark Ingram and Sony Michel. I'm taking both of those guys before Montgomery. And in PPR, it's Philip Lindsay and Sony Michel. Again, Michel I'll take ahead, but I will take Montgomery ahead of Lindsay.
I'm going to shock you absolutely 0% here by saying that I would take him over Mark Ingram. As you know, my love for Mark Ingram is in the negatives. I like him more than Mark Ingram because I think Ingram's going to be in a similar situation in Baltimore where he's going to be the lead back, but they're going to give the ball to a bunch of other running backs as well. One thing I wanted to mention about the Bears, they are a frustrating team for fantasy. Last year, Jordan Howard came out of the gates on fire. Middle of the season, he disappeared, and it was Tariq Cohen time. And then near the end of the season, he came back. The same thing happened with the wide receivers and the other pass catchers. Trey Burton got off to a good start, disappeared, and didn't come back. Allen Robinson had games. Taylor Gabriel had games. Anthony Miller had games. This is a football team that is a good club, but not great for fantasy. So expect some frustration if you're going with any of the Bears. But as we're talking, any last points on the running backs before we go to Allen Robinson?
No, nothing that hasn't been covered. I mean, we know Tariq is definitely a lot more valuable in PPR formats. We didn't really touch too much on that, but it's pretty self-explanatory when you just look at his stats. Surprisingly, he's being taken as running back 30 in standard and running back 27 in PPR. I don't have him that high in standard.
Yeah, it seems high for standard, but it seems about right for PPR.
Yeah.
For standard, be looking at top 35 at the earliest, maybe in between 35, 40. Okay, Allen Robinson, the man with the jersey hanging in the back, was a big fan when he was in Jacksonville. I thought huge things were coming last year. I got a lot of shares of him. And then this Chicago Bears offense is just frustrating. And he's no longer a number one guy. He's a top 25, top 20 type guy, high ceiling of top 15. But he should be fairly safe. Just expect some frustration from week to week. Matt, anything to add on him?
Allen Robinson, yeah, you pretty much nailed it right on the head with that. What I will throw in here, though, is his ADP being as wide receiver 31 in standard. Seems like a really good deal. I think both of us have him in the top 25 in standard, I believe. And PPR 29, slightly higher. But again, we both have him around 20-ish in PPR. It seems like a good value pick there. I would be thrilled to have him as my wide receiver 3. I'm taking him as wide receiver 2 in most leagues.
Right. I do agree it's a good value. I think he's top 25. Like, he's 15 to 25 should be his range, barring injury, of course. So if you're getting him at 30, you're getting good value. And I remember when we did our mocks, Robinson was a guy who fell to us a lot. Same with Jarvis Landry, who we talked about being undervalued. And I think Corey Davis would have been the other one who was in that group that was falling at the time. This was back in June. And we'll be looking to do more mocks to see what's happening now. Tell me about Anthony Miller and Taylor Gabriel.
Anthony Miller, second-year wideout, obviously looking to break through. He's got the same ADP the same wide receiver ranking on both standard and PPR, wide receiver 53. I feel like that's a little bit low for him. I think he's going to break through a little bit more than that. Again, I don't love him. I like him more as a fourth wide receiver or a bench wide receiver. Anyway, being taken behind guys like Golden Tate with that suspension, I don't see that. Maybe that will change maybe as more drafts get done. And Kill Harry is ahead of him in PPR. I know you love him, but not this year for me. Again, it's the Bears' offense. It's never going to be too exciting, but this is a guy that I don't mind targeting here with this kind of value sitting here.
Yeah, surprising to see his ADP so low, because to me he's a borderline flex play every week and an easy flex play during the bye week. So he's not a bad depth player who is still young and still has that opportunity to break out. People loved the talent last year. I wasn't a huge fan, but I didn't think he was bad by any means. I'm actually intrigued by where Taylor Gabriel is going, because I think Taylor Gabriel is going to return probably similar value to Anthony Miller without the upside. If Anthony Miller breaks out, then okay, it's not going to be there. But where is Taylor Gabriel going?
Taylor Gabriel, do you even want to venture a guess here?
83.
Somewhat close in the range that you could have picked between 1 and $1 million here. Wide receiver 98, number 293. So it's a free pick at the end of your draft. PPR wide receiver 78. So obviously people have a little bit more faith in him in PPR than they do in standard leagues.
He is not a big reception guy, though.
Just telling you the numbers, man. I can't explain them. I'm not taking him in any leagues this year, so I don't want any part of that.
No, I'm just kind of curious as to where he was going, because, like I said, he's going to probably return. Obviously, Anthony Miller's got the ceiling, but Taylor Gabriel should return decent value, but not a guy you want to pick late in the draft. Unlike someone like John Ross, who we mentioned earlier, who's, I guess, going around the same ADP, give or take. Anybody going that late is the same ADP to me. With Taylor Gabriel, you're not going to know after 2 weeks if he's good. He might do nothing for 2 weeks and then have a good third and fourth week just because of the way this offense works. So avoid him in drafts. Anthony Miller with some good value.
The last guy I'm going to touch on here for receiver-wise is Riley Ridley. If I'm going to pick a third receiver off the Bears, it's going to be Ridley. It's not going to be Gabriel. I feel like he's going to be the guy that's going to step up if there is an injury to either Allen Robinson or Anthony Miller. I don't know why I went blank there. He's not particularly fast. He's going to be a guy that's going to win a 50-50 ball for you a lot of the times, though. Trubisky isn't super accurate. That is something that that might actually draw his attention, that Ridley will fight for those balls. Again, it's somebody that I'm taking a flyer on the very end of the draft here. He is going actually higher than Gabriel in standard, but lower in PPR.
Because of the flawed data in PPR for Taylor Gabriel, apparently.
Yeah.
It'd have to be a 16-team league for me to take a shot on him. I don't like this offense. So a fringe player to me isn't going to become a star. He's going to become another fill-in player. I have him in a lot of dynasty leagues, but I don't see him in 2019. But someone who does have value in 2019, tight end Trey Burton, who actually wasn't as bad as everybody thinks last year. Just people had very high expectations for him. Where's he being drafted this year, Matt?
He is being drafted in standard as the 14th tight end off the board, and in PPR, the 16th tight end off the board. I have him top 10 in both formats. It doesn't make any sense to me. Again, people thought, hey, this is the next Travis Kelce coming out. No, he didn't do that. He's not Travis Kelce. Sorry, guys. But he was still tight end number 6 and tight end number 8 in standard and PPR last year. I don't know why he's taking the big fall. It doesn't make any sense to me. He's great value there. In a 12-team tight end league, I'm taking him. In a 10-team tight end league, I'm okay with getting him as the last tight end coming off the board.
Yeah, I have him 11th, just ahead of Jack Doyle and Austin Hooper, and then the rest of these knuckleheads. I have ahead of TJ Hawkinson, who I'm assuming most people have ahead of Trey Burton. But Trey Burton is going to be not as consistent as Vance McDonald, but he's going to put up points every week. And by the end of the year, he's going to probably finish around that 10 spot. 8 to 12 is going to be the range where he finishes. He's not overly exciting because of the offense that he's on. The next Travis Kelce is a huge stretch that people thought last year, but people didn't know what to expect with that Bears offense either, right? So we know what it is now. It's week to week. It's a game plan depending on who they want to feed or who they think is in the best chance to win. Yeah,
people thought with Nagy coming over to the Bears, Andy Reid, they just made the comparison right there. Oh, good. There's a good tight end going there. No, he's not wide receiver or tight end number 1, which Travis Kelce is. Feel free with number 10 there. He's going lower, so he'll be there for the most part.
Yeah, so if he's going at that ADP, he's somebody that you can just wait on it and pick your team around that if you're comfortable with Trey Burton as your tight end. Moving on to the Lions here, and man who underperform worse than he's ever underperformed before. Matt Stafford at quarterback, definitely in line for a bounce back year this year. He can't be that bad again.
No, probably not, but quarterback is so deep, and there are so many good quarterbacks. He is being drafted as quarterback number 25.
Wow.
Honestly, I have him as quarterback 22 and 21 in 4-point and 6-point touchdown leagues. And it's not even a shot against Stafford. It is that the quarterback position is so good this year. I can't justify taking him above a lot of the names in front of him. Guys he's being drafted behind are Josh Allen and Derek Carr. Being drafted ahead of Nick Foles and Marcus Mariota, which is good. But he's not in the same category as those bottom two there, but he's right in there with Derek Carr.
Yeah, I have him at 20th in a 4-point. I'm assuming I have him probably at the same spot in the 6-point. I have him ahead of Josh Allen and Mitch Trubisky and even Dak Prescott, who I don't care for this year, with Zeke holding. And, yeah, Derek Carr behind him as well. I think that his run of being that high-volume guy is probably over. But in a 2-quarterback league, he's absolutely fine as a pick. He's not somebody that I will probably get in any single quarterback leagues unless the rest of the owners go crazy on quarterbacks and I get stuck with him. But in a 2-quarterback league, I'm fine having him as a second or third quarterback.
But why is he so low, such a low volume play this year? Because the next guy we're going to talk about.
C.J. Anderson. Oh, sorry. Kerryon Johnson. Definitely a breakout candidate for both of us. I could easily be top 10. The only thing that scares me about him is the injury. He's dealt with the injury last year. He dealt with it in college, and it's leg, right? It's hamstring. So it's scary, but it's worth the risk to me. With Theo Riddick gone, he's the only pass catcher there. I don't know who else they're going to be throwing to out of the backfield. C.J. Anderson, not a big pass catcher. And Kerryon is a good pass catcher out of the backfield. So I definitely do like him as a breakout candidate. What's his ADP this year?
He's being drafted as running back number 14 in standard and running back 15 in PPR. So everybody is kind of on him this year. Being drafted just below Leonard Fournette and Damian Williams out of Kansas City. Being drafted ahead of Aaron Jones and Melvin Gordon now in standards. PPR, same two in front of him, Damian Williams and Leonard Fournette. They just flip-flopped. Devonta Freeman flips in behind him, immediately behind him, and again, Aaron Jones. Running back, 14 and 15, but spot 25 and 27. End of round 2 guy.
Or the round 3. I don't know if you saw, but one of our Who Would You Rathers today was Kerryon Johnson versus Aaron Jones in a half-point PPR. Did you vote?
I actually did not get a chance to go onto Insta yet. For me, unfortunately, for Kerryon, it is still Aaron Jones.
I'm going to go the other way there. It is Kerryon for me. I think both guys present risk, but I like Kerryon Johnson there. But I do like Aaron Jones more than Henry and Williams. So it's odd that the guys behind Kerryon Johnson I like more than the guys ahead of him. But definitely taking Kerryon over every single person you mentioned there. I'm buying in on the risk.
It was actually Leonard Fournette, not Derrick Henry.
Oh, sorry. Well, Leonard Fournette, Derrick Henry. I'll take Kerryon Johnson over Leonard Fournette. We do got to talk about C.J. Anderson, though. Showed what he can do last year on a great offense. Detroit Lions, not so much a great offense, but he's a capable runner. And he is a solid handcuff as well. We spoke about somebody else being a handcuff earlier. C.J. Anderson, if you draft Kerryon Johnson with your second or third round pick, you have to get C.J. Anderson. Because if Kerryon goes down, there's nobody else. They got rid of Riddick. There's no Amir Abdullah. I'm sure Zach Zenner is still there, hanging around the roster. But C.J. Anderson will be a 3-down back in that case. Probably won't catch a lot of balls, but maybe he'll catch 2 or 3 a game. So definitely handcuff Kerryon Johnson with C.J. Anderson. I don't know if I'd say that for any other running back, but in this case, you got to do it.
And C.J. can be had pretty much near the end of the draft here, running back 61, 62, picks 182, 190. I'm going to echo what you said there, though. When you get a running back like that with one of your top 3 picks, if they're an injury risk, I mean, unfortunately, yeah, you can't predict injuries, but if they've got a history there, they're more susceptible to it generally. Grab the cuff here, and CJ, like Ben just said, proved last year he can still do it. given the right situation here. CJ's a fine play for me if you've got carry on.
And I think we might run into a similar situation that you're quite passionate about in a team or two. Let's move on to wide receivers now. And another breakout candidate. We got 2 breakout candidates from the Lions. Kenny Galladay. What's his ADP as I check where I have him ranked?
He is wide receiver number 18 in standard and wide receiver number 18 in PPR. I've got him ahead of that in both of my sets of rankings here. I've got him as wide receiver 13 in standard, and I have him as wide receiver number 13 in PPR.
I'm assuming I got him probably higher in standard than I do in PPR, but looking at the standard ranking here, I have him at number 11, just behind Julio Jones, who I'm a little down on this year. But I have him ahead of Amari Cooper and Brandon Cooks and Diggs, just because I think he's the only show in town. I don't think Marvin Jones is a factor, and I don't know who their third wide receiver is. Do you have anybody?
I can't think of that off the top of my head either. Unfortunately, he wasn't good enough for me to write down here, so that really shows what we think of him. If you're drafting here, he's going at 46 or 43, but he's being taken behind a guy like Robert Woods in both formats. Julian Edelman in standard for some reason is going ahead of him. I don't understand that whatsoever. He's definitely way better than Julian Edelman. PPR, Brandon Cooks is slightly above him as well. I can maybe buy that one, but I think the ceiling with Galladay is so high this year. Stafford's going to continually look for him. Like you said, Marvin Jones Jr., he's on the downswing there. They don't have a third wide receiver on the roster as far as we know. And Hawk, you hammer this home all the time. You don't like rookie tight ends. And it's very rare that they actually do anything productive. They do have Jesse James, but...
Yeah, and Jesse James is the projected Week 1 starter, according to the coach speak. Marvin Jones, I actually have the ADP here. Top 35. Not a top 35 receiver. No, go away. I thought he might have been a value play. I thought maybe he was going at like 55. He's going ahead of the likes of Corey Davis, Larry Fitz, Curtis Samuel, and Josh Gordon, Sterling Shepard, Cortland Sutton. I just listed like 20 guys that I would take ahead of him that are going behind him. What are people thinking of Marvin Jones here?
I don't think people are going with Kenny Galladay. I think that's the problem. I don't think people are buying Kenny Galladay. Wide receiver 18 is too low for him.
Yeah, I think we're in full agreement here. They have him at 18 and him at 35 when he should be, 5 spots up at least for Kenny Galladay and, 10 spots back for Marvin Jones. People are still thinking Marvin Jones is going to do something. No, he's not. It's going to be the Kenny Galladay show. He's going to be the number one. This is an old-fashioned fantasy offense. 1 wide receiver, 1 running back. They throw it all the way to the number 1 wide receiver, and they run it with the number 1 running back. You don't see this offense very much anymore. Now it's 2 wide receivers that are good, a 1A, a 1B, a 2 down back, and a 3rd down back, or some type of running back by committee. This is old-school fantasy from 10-plus years ago. The Danian Tomlinson, the Sean Alexanders, when they were just run the ball and we'll throw it to 1 target. That's Antonio Gates in San Diego and whoever it was. You had Terrell Owens wherever he was and Randy Moss wherever they were, and they had no seconds. And that's what this is now. So let's talk about tight ends before we move on to Green Bay.
Sure.
Jesse James, is mentioned to be the starter. He will not last as a starter. T.J. Hawkinson, to me, is about as NFL ready as you're going to get from a tight end, and even still, I don't think he's NFL ready.
No, Hawk is being taken as a borderline starter right now in standard formats at tight end 13. Obviously, again, depending on how many teams you actually have in your league, whether or not that's a starting position. He's got the talent, and he will be somebody that I will be drafting maybe next year, the year after. Not this year for Hawk for me. He's outside of my top 15, I believe, in both formats here. Is I just going to double check on that.
While you're doing that, I'll just mention I have him at 14. Definitely not somebody that I want as a starting tight end this year. If you're playing in some type of keeper or dynasty league, by all means, take a shot at him, because I can definitely see his draft spot next year being around, say, 8, just to throw a number out there, he's going to be drafted higher than he is this year. And it might be based on the results that he puts up near the end of the season, or maybe just because of the coach speak and the fact that he's the guy and they want to get him the ball and they're going to try to force him in 2020.
Yeah, like you said, even if Hawk does absolutely nothing this year, that ADP is going up for sure. People love the high upside tight ends drafted. I'm going to put I think number 10 this year, maybe a little bit higher. I should know that.
It's either 8 or 10.
Yeah. People are going to remember that next year. Hawk could get 1 catch for 1 yard, 0 touchdowns the entire season. Guarantee you that ADP goes higher next year.
That's crazy talk. Let's move on to Green Bay here, and good old Aaron Rodgers wasn't as good as he used to be last year. Is he done? Is it time to throw in the towel?
No, it is not. Aaron Rodgers is going due for a bounce back. He was stuck in a boring offense with Mike McCarthy. There was some tension in that relationship that's come out. Matt LaFleur's there. People are making a deal that he didn't like joint practices with the Texans and he doesn't like this audible thing. He's going to be fine. Take him as a top 5 quarterback. I have him as a top 3. He is going at QB3. For some reason, I didn't write down his actual ADP there. Do you have that?
His ADP? No, I don't have his ADP.
Okay. Well, that's either way. He's being drafted as quarterback number 3. I've got him as quarterback number 2 in 6-point passing leagues, and quarterback number 3 in 4-pointers. A-Rod's going to be back, big bounce back. This offense is going to be good. They're going to have a good running game again this year, and they've got lots of mouths to feed at wide receiver.
So I'm just going to chime in and saying, yeah, I definitely due for a bounce back. If you're going to draft a quarterback, you can't draft them until the 5th round at the earliest, and even still, 6th round is the smart play. Fill up your starting skill positions. If you want to wait on tight end, that's fine. But 6th round is the earliest I'm going to take him in, unless for some reason there's just absolutely nothing with my 5th round pick. I'm going to kind of just give you the floor here on this team. I'll mention quickly about Aaron Jones. We talked about him, comparing him to Kerryon Johnson. I have him just behind Kerryon Johnson. But what's his ADP?
He is being drafted as running back number 15 in standard and running back 17 in PPR. I feel that is too low for him in both formats. So I'm getting him as a steal, in my opinion. Running back, he's number 28 in standard and 33 in PPR.
Definitely in PPR. I think he's going to be catching a lot of balls this year. Like they showed a little bit of it last year. He caught some longer passes and ran some nice routes and got behind the defense. So I definitely see that being a factor. The one risk that I saw today when looking at him was that he's never topped 200 touches. So the durability could be a factor, but this is that second tier of running backs here, second, third tier of running backs. There are no sure things. There's no Christian McCaffreys here. There's no Alvin Kamara's. There's no Saquon Barkley's. You're going to get some risk, and it's just who do you like. He definitely has a huge chance to break out. There's the uncertainty of this new offense, which everyone expects to be better than last year. I was going to just say that McCarthy held him back last year. He, for whatever reason, kept running Jamal Williams. When he finally did sort of have him as his bell cow back, which didn't happen a lot, but weeks 3 to 13, he was still kind of sharing with Jamal Williams. He was just coming back from a suspension there. He was running back 13 in standard. He's definitely got that potential. 13, I think, is a floor barring injury. I've got him as running back 11 in standard and PPR. I am more than happy to take him at the end of round 2, early round 3, where he is going. He's being drafted behind Damian Williams in standard. I don't get it at all. Aaron Jones is going to be better than Damian Williams. Kerryon Johnson, we talked about. Being still drafted ahead of Melvin Gordon now, which we all know his situation, and Devonta Freeman. Devonta Freeman is ahead of him, though, in PPR. Devonta Freeman definitely safer. And in PPR, I definitely don't mind taking him there. It really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for more of a potential home run pick that's going to leapfrog the ADP, then that's going to be Aaron Jones. Devonta Freeman really isn't going to be much higher than where he's going. But, yeah. These guys in this tier here, the Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, Kerryon Johnson, those guys all represent risk. They're all in the same division, and we'll get to Cook in a bit. And Freeman's the safe one. So if you want the safe one, take Freeman. If you want the risk, you pick the guy that you like the most. And that's basically all there is to it there.
The next running back here is going to be Jamal Williams, that is being drafted next highest. I don't think Jamal Williams is the next running back to own in Green Bay. It's going to be Dexter Williams. I think he's going to surpass him this year, and it's not going to take very long into the season. Jamal Williams had chances the last 2 years. He couldn't take it. He's a very good pass blocker. I'll give him that. He's not very good running the ball. So sure, he maybe gets in the odd third down and pass blocks a little bit more. If something happens to Aaron Jones, Green Bay will learn very quickly that Dexter Williams is the better back to have. You can get him later. Jamal Williams doesn't have a high ADP by any means. He's at 62 and 64 running backs. Picks 192 and 230. Dexter Williams is 81 and 79 in standard and PPR. Wait the extra round or two. Grab Dexter Williams if you have Aaron Jones, if you want the cuff. I don't even think this is a cuff situation. I think you can pick up Dexter if something happens to Aaron Jones.
Yeah, that's my thoughts as well. This is not a cuff situation that I would look at. It's going to take Dexter Williams time to get that handcuff roll. It's going to start with Jamal Williams. But if he goes down, they could be a split as they bring him in. If he does go down, pick up Dexter Williams for the long-term play. Let's move on to wide receivers here. And Davante Adams, what is there to say about him? He's about as solid as they come. I have him ranked number 2.
That's where I got him. Yeah, he's super solid. He's going as wide receiver number 2. He's going as 8th overall pick in standard and PPR.
Yeah, he's a first-round pick, and he's a guy that I like over the Le'Veon Bells and the James Connors. Joe Mixon is close, but I'd probably still take Davante Adams over him. Happy to start with a wide receiver. There's
just so little risk with Davante Adams. He proved even the year that Rodgers went out, he still did well when Kaiser was in. It's hard to do, but he did it. They even talk about wanting to get Adams the ball even more this year. I don't see how that's even possible, but that they're going to try. Do you have anything else to say about DA there?
No, it's an easy pick. He's a first-round pick. He's my number 2 wide receiver. I'm taking him over the questionable running backs. I'm happy to start with him as my first-round pick. Why don't you give me the ADPs on MVS and Geronimo Allison? MVS is Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Okay, so MVS, wide receiver 44 in standard, wide receiver 42 in PPR. Geronimo, just behind him in standard, wide receiver 45, and wide receiver 45 as well in PPR. To say which one of these guys is going to end up with the higher stats at the end of the year is really tough. MVS is expected to line up as the wideout, and Geronimo is going to be the slot. He's going to fill the Randall Cobb role, is what they're saying at a Green Bay there. If I had to pick between these two fellows, I would personally take Geronimo, but it's very close.
Sorry, the ADP on Geronimo was 45?
45 on both of them.
I have him ranked 36th here, and I have MVS behind him. Not a fan of MVS. I think he's a one type of trick guy. He's fast. He can take the top off the defense. He'll get his plays. But I think Geronimo Allison, especially in a PPR league, is going to be the guy who gets you more volume, more consistency, and he's, to me, the second wide receiver that I want on Green Bay.
Only other person to mention out of the wide receivers that I believe is preseason sweetheart, Jake Kumerow. Gets a lot of love. He got a lot of love last year. I think you would have heard a lot more from him, but he got injured right before the season started. Came on towards the end of the year, but never really got rolling. But how much faith can you have in a guy that's starting as a wide receiver number 4? Not a lot. Just someone more to watch than to maybe select in your draft. If he comes out hot week 1 against Chicago, take a flyer on him. If you've got someone like a John Ross that isn't producing after a couple of weeks, throw in Jake Kumerow. Hopefully no one scoops him up ahead of time.
Yeah, I got nothing on Kumerow. Number 4 on Green Bay is a lot better than being number 3 on some other teams. So there is that upside to look at. But you're talking about a deep league with a deep bench where you're grabbing a Kumerow and kind of holding him and stashing him and hoping that he hits. But now on to the tight end, Jimmy Graham, who I probably have ranked in the teens. Not someone I'm interested in for two reasons. One, he's past his prime. And two, Aaron Rodgers and tight ends haven't been the best fit.
No, they have not, and people have noticed. Jimmy Graham is not being drafted high at all. He's being drafted as the 19th tight end off the board. He is not getting the name value. Tight end 19, if for whatever reason your league drafts 19 tight ends, sure, Jimmy Graham is a fine pick there. He still does have some talent there. That offense is going to be good. They're going to be in the red zone quite a bit. Jimmy's a bigger body. Maybe Rodgers looks his way this year, but it's not somebody I'm going to be owning this year.
Yeah, not somebody I'm interested in. So let's just move on to the Vikings. And somebody I am interested in is Kirk Cousins. I believe you said his ADP was the 20th quarterback off the board?
19.
19. I'm pretty sure without looking that I have him as a top 12 quarterback, possibly even as high as 10. He finished half a point outside of the top 12 quarterbacks in 2018, which everyone sees as a down year for him and expects him to be better. So he was 1 point out of being a top 12 guy. Everyone expects him to be better. ADP 19. This is value. This is a steal. This is one of the targets that we had for quarterbacks, and for that exact reason. A bad year, finishes 13th, half a point off 12, and now he's going 6 to 7 spots lower.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Cousins last year is he had a couple of weeks where he was really bad, really down, didn't have a lot of points. It turned a lot of fantasy owners off of him. That I'm going to say played a factor in his ADP. Like you said, there's no reason he should be this low. A bad year, quarterback 13. People want him back, or people want him to be bouncing back. For some reason, he's still going lower.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is I was watching my least favorite show on TV, Training Camp today on the NFL Network, and he was doing an interview and talking about how last year when he got to Minnesota, he didn't have a house. He was staying in a hotel, and the whole preseason, they were just kind of getting into their house. And you might think, oh, who cares? He's a professional athlete. He should be ready to play. It makes a big difference when you trying to get accustomed to a new team and everything's new. You don't really feel like you belong yet. Now he has a home there. His family's there. That makes a psychological difference. He's had another year in the system. He's going to be better. He is a target. Target him as a starting quarterback in your leagues this year. Dalvin Cook.
Just a starting quarterback that you can get at the end of your draft that is going to be better than a lot of the guys going in front of him. Dak's going in front of him. He's going to be better than Dak. Phillip Rivers, I have them close, but he's in this mix with Trubisky and Jimmy Garoppolo. He doesn't belong there. He's definitely going to be better than these guys. Yeah, and just he belongs in kind of the mix with like the Phillip Rivers and Lamar Jacksons. That's kind of the area that he should be in at that 10 to 14 spot with those guys. Yeah, Goff, Big Ben, maybe those guys. Yeah. Why don't we talk about your favorite running back for this year, Dalvin Cook? Dalvin Cook, running back number 11 as per ADP. Don't take this as a shot against Dalvin Cook because I do think he has talent. The problem with Dalvin Cook is the guy can't stay healthy. He's had 2 years. He's missed significant time both seasons. One was obviously season-ending injury. He's being taken as the 11th running back overall. Picks 20, pick 18 in standard PPR. That puts him middle of round 2. I'm not taking him there. I have him ranked just below this, so that's not the issue. It's the health. Once he gets injured, they have a backup in Alexander Mattison that I believe has the skill to take over that position once Dalvin Cook lets him have it. He's going to get the opportunity. We've seen it. 2 years in a row, Cook has not stayed on the field. Watch out for Alexander Mattison to take that spot. Draft Alexander Mattison at the end-ish of your draft, RB52, RB56. You won't regret it. You're going to get 4 or 5 starts out of him for sure. Sure that when Cook comes back, they may split a little bit, but Madison, you should be expecting him to have the higher volume. So basically what you're saying is not only if you do grab Cook, do you have to reach to grab Matheson because you need the cuff, but even if you don't draft Cook, you're looking at Matheson because he's going to get 5 or 6 games. And a running back starting getting a full workload for 5 or 6 games might not look nice at the end of the year when it comes to total stats, but fantasy football is a week-to-week contest. And for those 5 or 6 weeks, that is a huge edge that you're going to have on your opponent. Absolutely. So let's just move on to wide receivers if you got nothing else. You said your piece about Dalvin Cook.
Good talent, can't stay healthy. Matheson's taking his job
By the end of the year.
That-
Next year, Madison will be the higher of the 2 picks in fantasy football.
Hot take from Matty Nice. All right, let's start with Thielen or Diggs. Who do you want?
Let's start with the guy being drafted higher, Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen, we've talked about this in a couple of our posts. He started the year on fire, finished out in like a lion, out like a lamb. In weeks 1 through 9, he was number 1 wide receiver in standard. Weeks 1 through 10, he was number 1 in PPR. He went to wide receiver 33 in standard and wide receiver 29 in PPR from week 10 going forward. You can't have your wide receiver number 1 doing this as the top wide receiver on your team. I don't like it. I think he is somewhere in between those two guys. I have him in the mid-teens in my personal rankings. He's being drafted with wide receiver 11, wide receiver 10, pick 26. That's going to put him end of round 2, very beginning of round 3. I am taking the guys that are going after him in Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, and his teammate, Stephon Diggs. I'm taking over Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I have Stephon Diggs 1 spot ahead of Thielen. This is in standard, I believe. I'm sure in PPR it might actually be flipped. Let me just take a quick look. But yeah, I definitely do. I liked Diggs better last year. I always like Diggs better. But I saw Thielen play the other day, and he looked pretty good. Actually, I have Stephon Diggs still 1 spot ahead of him. Stephon Diggs does get a lot of volume. I don't think Thielen's going to be bad by any means. But as you said, he is being drafted a little high, at least in standard for me. In PPR, I'm not opposed to taking him there because I have him ranked number 10 in PPR because they both had over 100 catches last year. Did you know that? Both wide receivers for the Vikings had over 100 catches. So these are good PPR guys, both of them. Thielen, I don't think he's had any serious injury histories. Diggs has had a little bit more injury history. I'm taking Diggs over him in both formats, and I'm not going to be taking Thielen where he's at in standard, but I'm okay with taking him where he's at in PPR.
You have him as wide receiver 10 in PPR, you said?
I do, yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out who do you have below him?
Tyreek Hill, of course, Julio Jones, Kenny Golladay, Amari Cooper. These are all guys that I don't think will be high volume guys. I can easily see him finishing with 20 plus catches over them. So that's over a point a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's giving them the edge over the guys that are more traditional receivers. You know, Amari Cooper is going to be like a 6 for something. Kenny Golladay, 5 catches. Julio could have volume, but he could have a 3 game for 100 as well.
My biggest thing with Thielen is the inconsistency. I don't want that as a wide receiver 1 for my team. That's my biggest problem with Thielen. I'm sure at the end of the day his numbers are going to look fine. They did look fine last year. He was wide receiver 7. It's just not something I look at. And that's one of the problems you have with Tyreek Hill, I believe, actually.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill is one of the guys who is one game going to put up 25, and the next game, possibly going to put up 5. And that's my comment there is at the end of the season, his stats look good. It's a little bit different with Thielen because in the first 9 weeks of the season, he was consistently dominant, and then he just fell off a cliff, and he just wasn't as good. It wasn't like you were getting the hit and miss. Like it wasn't like he had 140 yards and 3 scores one game. He was always 100 yards and a touchdown, 100 yards and a touchdown. You can set your watch to it. He had like 7 straight 100-yard games or a touchdown. I can't remember the exact stat, but he was very consistent, and then off a cliff.
And that's my concern. Why the off the cliff? Little hurt, but man, did he ever fall off?
I think that's on Cousins.
And
I think it doesn't happen to that extent this year. I also don't think he'll be as good as he was at the beginning of the season. You're correct. He's going to be somewhere in the middle. I just think he's going to be closer to the first half than the last half. And both guys caught 100 balls last year. Both guys I want in PPR. Move on to tight end, and we have an interesting tight end situation here. Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith Jr. Kyle Rudolph is probably, top 15 ADP? Kyle
Rudolph's ADP is sitting at 18 in standard and 14 in PPR. Interesting numbers for him. I personally don't see Irv Smith Jr. is doing a ton this year. I have heard good things out of camp, though, for him, that he's a lot better of a blocker than they anticipated. But I think Rudolph is going to be the man there this year. Having said that, he is borderline starter for me. I have him as tight end 13 in both formats here. So yes, I've got him higher value than he is going for an ADP, but someone that isn't really a target for me.
Remind me, how many years has Irv Smith Jr. been in the league?
This is his first year, I believe.
And what position does he play?
Tight end.
And how do we feel about rookie tight ends having impact in fantasy?
Not very good.
Yeah, so Irv Smith Jr. is at best going to steal value from Kyle Rudolph and not possess any value himself. Even with an injury, he's probably a guy that you're going to be like, man, I have to pick this guy up to see what he can do, and I get it, and I probably will do the same, but don't expect anything. Do not draft Irv Smith Jr. The only way you're drafting Kyle Rudolph is if you're playing in a deeper league, because you should be able to manage a better tight end than Kyle Rudolph for your fantasy team.
The last bit for me on Rudolph, just because you had mentioned injury, he hasn't missed a game in the last 4 years. He doesn't get hurt. So he'll be on the field.
So you're saying he's due for an injury. Matt's calling an injury to Kyle Rudolph. Call your bookie, put some money on it. Matt's pick. Anything else before we wrap up, Matt?
Thanks for watching.
That's it.